In the following video I'm going to show you how to do the shirt. So I'm going to just do the basic shirt without any stitching because you have created stitching. The stitching instructions are the same as the stitching instructions for the denim skirt, always using the offset path function, minus 0.5 for single needle, minus 0.75 for twin needle. So drawing the shirt, I'll draw it in each part in different colors, and we'll draw the front and the back. So to start, I always, as you know, like to have my pen tools out and my group selection out. Start with the pen tool. I'm going to start with a color in the stroke. So I will use blue. Zooming in, make sure that you're on a different layer to the croquis layer. So at the moment I am going to create a new layer and I'll be in layer 4. I'll lock the other layers. So what I've actually done is dragged a guideline to the center of the center front of the body, as it's a finer line than the line that was originally there, and I've used the V that represents the junction between the two collarbones as my guide for the center of the body. So pen tool, because it's a flat collar, I'm going to click slightly lower than that collar junction up to the side neck shoulder join. Change that color to blue because I think it's an easier color to see. I'm going past this little nick over here because that would represent a much more fitted sleeve, just slightly up and beyond that shoulder edge, coming down and lining up with that point over here, because that would be where the underarm of a woven shirt is, and dragging to create the shape for the arm. Clicking back into there to get rid of that handle, and now creating the side seam shape by just dragging those handles to create a nice smooth curve to the side seam. Click, and I can drag that a little bit if I want to reshape that back into that anchor point to get rid of the other handle, and down to the center front. We'll shape the center front hem and the center front neck using direct selection. I select both of those anchor points and I'm going to horizontal align center. Coming into my Convert Anchor Point tool, I click onto that anchor point, start dragging, and then hold Shift to drag it in a straight line, so 180 degrees to have a smooth join. Same at the bottom, click, drag, and hold Shift. The wider you drag, the less severe the curve is. So that's my shirt front, and now I'm going to add the button stand to it. The reason why I put in my center front anchor point is so that I can use that as an adjustment later when I'm joining the two sides together or laying the two sides together. It also helps when I combine my two fronts to make a back. What I'm going to do now is add the button overlap over here. So I rest my mouse on the center front anchor point, click once, hold Shift, and using my eye I work out what I think that my overlap should be. So I'm thinking that probably 1.5 millimeters is good enough. So as you know, when we've created our grids, we've created them in millimeter sizes, so that's almost in the center. If I go to about there, I know it's about 1.5 millimeters, which means a total button stand of 3 millimeters. Holding Shift, I click at the bottom. I don't worry about that being exactly in line, because what I'm going to do now is select both of those anchor points and vertical align bottom and right click and join. Zooming out, I now have two center front anchor points, which will help me when I align my two fronts, and it will also help me when I combine or add to shape area the back tool, the back of the shirt. Using direct selection, I'm going to copy the armhole, Command C, Control C, Command F, Control F to the front. I'll change the color of that so you can see that more clearly. I'll drag that out to get a bit more space. Pen tool, and now I'm going to draw my sleeve in. So we know by now, resting your mouse on the open anchor point / down to the wrist, click. So I've made a very, very straight shape here, and now I'm going to come in and adjust this slightly. I believe that should be a little bit curved that way, and I'm going to add a little bit of a blouson to that sleeve by using my convert anchor point to drag that top anchor point, and then clicking back on that anchor point that I've dragged down to create that, to get rid of it. So when you'll need that blouson is when you've got a shirt that has a cuff with a couple of tucks in it. If you have something like a denim jacket that doesn't have any tucks in it, you draw a very straight sleeve. So zooming in, I am going to adjust that a little and move that up, because what I want to do is add a cuff to that now. My cuff I'm going to do by simply drawing a rectangle. Keyboard shortcut for rectangle is M. I'll give it a new color, and remember, because we've got snap to point selected, black arrow, white arrow, and I'm snapping that to point. Rotate, I'm going to move the rotate fulcrum from the center to line up with that anchor point, and now holding on to the path, I rotate that cuff until it intersects with the sleeve path. You can see it intersecting because the sleeve path is highlighted. Selection tool, and now I can line that up with the other anchor point. To be absolutely perfectly happy that they're lined up, I can also average them. So I have my cuff, my sleeve, and my front. It's always best when you're drawing your shapes initially not to have any fill, so that you can see where everything sits. The next shape I'm going to draw is the collar shape. I'm going to use the center front as a guide. So there's my center front, and there's my center front anchor point. So I'll start from that point and do the point of the collar. Because it's a flat collar, it will come a little bit up and be slightly curved. So it'll come a little bit down the shoulder and be slightly curved over there. I click back into that anchor point to get rid of that handle. Up a little bit up the neck, and then put a little bit of a curve into that collar so that it's standing up a little bit, but it's coming flat down here. If I use my direct selection, I can give it a little bit more of a curve, or less, which I think is better. Once I'm happy with all those shapes, what I'm going to do is select everything with my selection tool. Keyboard shortcut for that is V, and go to default black and white. I'm going to create the stitching but not talk you through it, so I'll create it and you will see the finished product so that you understand what stitching is required. Having done the stitching, it's probably good to do the pocket now. I'm using the rectangle tool to do that, and then I'm going to drag a guideline to the center of the pocket. So you see how I've taken that guideline, dragged it across until it shows that I'm completely in the center. Select that line, do the default black and white, and what we're going to do is add an anchor point to the center of that pocket and then move that point down. Marquee over everything, deselect the front, deselect the sleeve and group the pocket. Now for the buttons, I'll use the ellipse tool to do that. Eyedropper to do my black and white 0.5. Zoom in, move that over, and we'll do the buttonhole. I'm using the line segment tool to do this, holding shift and just doing 2 lines perpendicular to each other, grouping those 2 lines, arranging and bringing the button to the front. And now I will do a cross stitch in the center just to represent the fact that it is a 2-hole button. So showing options, I'll choose a round cap, transform, reflect and copy, select both of those and group them, and now select the button, and because I don't want to move where that button is when I align it, I'm going to click once again onto the button to make sure that this stitching is aligned to path. Center align and center align, and now group. And now I can group everything. I'll just make the buttonhole and the stitching the same color as the top stitching. And I'll make a copy, actually 2 copies of that button. The first button runs horizontal. I'll just bring that collar on top, and the other buttons will run vertical. So I'll just copy that a few times holding shift, or I can go Command D, Control D to do it again. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll do 7 buttons. Move the last button down to where we want it to be. Select all those buttons, deselect the front of the shirt and the collar. I am going to center align them and distribute the spacing between them. Let's have a look. So they just need to move over a little, and once I've done that, I'm going to group the buttons. Group everything now and transform, reflect and copy. Holding shift, move it across. Now we can ungroup and just delete what we don't need, because this body is going to go underneath the other body. I can use my group selection to do that. I'll just zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. What I'm going to do is rest my mouse on that center anchor point, drag it across and line it up with that anchor point on the other side, arrange center back, and then bring the collar to the front, and we're ready to fold the sleeve over. So selecting that sleeve, I'm going to ungroup it, move the cuff out the way, line segment in black, select both the line and the sleeve, and I'm coming into my, I'll just put a color in there, I've used my shape builder to divide it. Put my cuff back on, select both the sleeve and the cuff and group them, transform, reflect, and this time we just go OK. I'm going to ungroup it again so I can do the cuff. So ungroup, Ctrl C, Ctrl F to do the cuff, and this time I'm going to zoom in, direct selection, move that up because the cuff folds over from the top to the bottom, and just to show that it's a cuff we just do it like that. I can get my stitching and move that in line here. I can group that cuff together, and I'm just going to draw a simple slit, and the spare button we had over here, bring to front, rotate, and just using my eye I'm going to line that up with the cuff. So if I rested that there, you can see that it's in line with the edge of the cuff, and I'm again using my eye to see that it's in the center. So we can see that we've got two stitches over there, so I'll use that as something to center it with. Select the cuff, group, and the slit, and group. So right now we don't need the croquis layer on, so I'm going to switch that off. And we're going to do our back from the front, so I'm going to copy, transform, reflect, and copy. And I'm now ready to do my back.